Hello again everyone, Edwin Learnard back once again. In this YouTube astrological segment, I'm going to be dissertating and talking about zodiac signs and actors and actresses. Before I go through my, the signs Aries through Pisces and, actors that have those signs on the, Sun or Ascendant or what have you, what I want to talk about is, somewhat, I guess, theory, philosophy, with you, whatever, what I have on this. What I believe is that a lot of times I think actors and actresses, subconsciously and or consciously are drawn to roles that correspond with their astrological characteristics and the ways they may behave or act according to their astrological sign, which generally I believe is Sun, is strongly with the Sun and Ascendant, and the Moon could, be, in there somewhat. Anyway, that's and basically that's what I'm going to be talking about and going through the signs Aries through Pisces when I'm doing my delineations, and the actors and actresses that correspond with each sign accordingly. So anyway, let me get started. The first sign I want to talk about is Aries, and with Aries, the one example that comes to mind is William Shatner from Star Trek fame. Now, as most of you know, he was on the original series from 1966 to 1969, and obviously, this was a person of uncommon valor and courage and fortitude on the show that he played. And we know how Aries is, supposed to be, they have the no fear concept and known to be fearless. I mean, the role he played, Captain Kirk, on the show, he would take on virtually anybody or anything, as far as combat goes, whether it was a gigantic lizard man or, a human or, whatever it might be. He basically had no fear, and that was demonstrated strongly on that show, I think. Now the next sign I want to get into is Taurus. Now with Taurus, a good example of this is Sun sign Taurus native Tony Danza. And as most of you I'm sure know, he starred on Who's the Boss. It was a show, comedy, it was a sitcom that ran from 1984 to 1992, and he played a male housekeeper on the show. And on the show, he played, very, loyal, steadfast family, guy. I mean, he was, basically had, just the girl on the show, but he had a projected a family image to other characters on the show as well. And very stable and steady, always did his job, very diligent and dutiful, which are correspond with real life Taurian traits. And he had a robust sense of humor, and I think that is evident in Taurus personality coming full throttle on that show. Now the next sign I want to dissertate and talk about, I'm going to talk about Gemini. Now Stacy Keach is an actor, and he played Mike Hammer on that series from kind of on and off, sporadic. The show was sporadic from 1983, 1998. There were some periods, of the series and some movies that were in that time. And I noticed in a number of the episodes that, I guess it was somewhat, I don't know if you want to say, symbolic, but he would be seemingly walking after, a girl, which I guess we could say, represented his elusive love. And whenever she would turn a corner, he would try to follow her, but couldn't quite catch up with her. And Geminis are known for always seeking their true love, and a lot of them, it's said that it's a thing where they just search endlessly for them and for that particular love in his or her life. And it's funny how that's what he was doing on that show constantly. So I think that right there, that's almost, that's somewhat emblematic of the Gemini, thing, trying to search for, his or her love. And he did have Sagittarius rising. I guess that was the adventurous side we saw of him. I'm sure a number of you have seen on I don't know if it was on all the intros, but on at least one of the season intros that showed him clinging to a helicopter. There was a ladder, kind of like a ladder connected to the helicopter, and he was clinging on it while the helicopter was in flight. So we saw that adventurous side of him come out, maybe the Sag rising as well in that series. Now the next sign I want to talk about is Cancer, and Sylvester Stallone of Rocky movie fame, has his sun sign in Cancer. And there was a scene in the Rocky V movie, which came out in 1990, where there was, he was trying to get away from a recalcitrant person, a person that, I guess you could say, in the movie was a former protege that turned on him, someone he was training, and was just heckling Rocky, and kept trying to provoke him, and Rocky tried to get away, walk away. But what happened was this guy pushed Rocky's father-in-law, and after he did that, basically the kid gloves were up, so to speak, and that's when he went, basically to do combat with this guy. And what I'm basically stating is this corresponds, I think, with Cancers and Cancerian people in real life as well, because Cancers can be known to be, kind of, passive, timid sign, but if you threaten, a family member or more, then that's when a lot of them can become, somewhat maybe infuriated and will be ready to, to fight at a drop of a hat, if something like that were to happen. The next sign I'm going to talk about is Leo. Now, Carroll O'Connor, many of you have heard of him. He was on the, I guess we could say a kind of, legendary series All in the Family. And on the show, Leos can be, kind of, they can be domineering, resolute, which I think he exuded those traits on that show. But there was also a quiet, magnanimous, and generous side to Archie Bunker on that show as well, the character that he played. And in that, it wasn't necessarily so much of him doling out excessive funds to anybody, but when on the show, Rob Reiner and Sally Struthers were, played, son-in-law and daughter, respectively, and he had let them stay where they were living at for a number of years. I guess maybe virtually rent-free, or just, if they paid anything, I think it was very nominal, on the show. So he showed some generosity on that, in that series as well. Obviously we know he played, a bigot, on that show as well, but I'm not, correlating that with Leo, but I'm just saying that to let you know that, there were some good things about, Archie Bunker on that show, but it was really in subtle ways, and we saw a lot of, Leo, and like I stated before, I'm not saying the bigotry is connected with Leo in any way, shape, or form. I just want to make that clear. The next sign I want to talk about is Virgo, and if anybody was maybe a prototypical Virgo on a series, I'm thinking Peter Falk of Columbo fame, and he was someone that played a super sleuth. He played a detective on the series, had a very discerning eye, and ears or whatever, and he was, Virgos usually, can often detect things that others are oblivious to, and that others will miss or overlook. And that was, really his really showed, I think, the Virgo persona on that show. Now, I think it's possible he might have Scorpio rising, but that's another thing. So anyway, the attention to detail, and another person that has a strong, concept, is not a Virgo, but I think, I look at this person as has strong Virgo, characteristics on a show, is John Hillerman from Magnum P.I., and he played the role of Higgins on the show. He had kind of a persnickety, fastidious quality to him, and I look at it like, well, he is someone, that doesn't have, he has his moon was in Virgo, but he didn't have, Sun or Ascendant in Virgo, but he also had combined, he had 4 planets in Virgo, and he had 2 planets in the 6th house that correspond with it, and he played kind of a fastidious, persnickety kind of, personality, and I think that showed in the series. Now anyway, next sign I want to get to is Libra. Harry Anderson played a judge on Night Court from 1984 to 92. He was obviously very, that's the typical role of, I think of a, Libra in real life. That could be something that they do, because, obviously he was a little eccentric, character on the show, but also very fair and equitable, diplomatic, and tried to see, was a very fair judge, I felt, and that, showed, I think, his Libra traits coming through. Next sign I want to talk about is Scorpio. Now, Clint Eastwood has Scorpio rising, and he always has that tough countenance about him on the shows, his quiet demeanor, very, really, maybe very intense, and he just seems like, he's got that piercing, penetrating gaze, and, many people, it is said, can fear the Scorpio in real life, and he plays a very imposing and intimidating, detective on the show, and Scorpios are fond of investigating mysteries. Another person, ironically enough, who's Gemini with Scorpio rising is Sharon Gless, who played on Cagney and Lacey from I believe it was 82 to 88, and she played a super sleuth as well. So it's just odd how it worked out like that. And Scorpios in real life can be like that, as well. And like I said before, I didn't say Sharon Gless is Gemini with Scorpio rising. Now, next sun I want to talk about is Sagittarius. Paul Hogan, Crocodile Dundee fame. He was someone that had a very, adventurous, type of role in the Crocodile Dundee movies, whether it was walking on a number of crocodiles, live crocodiles, to get from point A to point B, or taking on some thugs, in New York City. He was somebody that showed, the adventurous, fearless kind of Sagittarius personality, and he has Sagittarius rising. So I think that kind of came out in his movie, in his role as Crocodile Dundee. Next one I want to talk about, I'm going to go back to Night Court again. Richard Mole, who played the character of Bull on the show, very stoic, very stern, serious personality, had a caustic wit from time to time, but very, like I said, just very, somebody that was very, I guess, lack of choice of better words, very non-animated. But like I said, Capricorn's, he's a sun in Capricorn, and in this show, I think he showed a lot of, Capricorn, characteristics. Now, the next one I want to talk about is Aquarius. Richard Dean Anderson is an Aquarius, MacGyver fame. He would constantly come up with one ingenious plan after another to get out, extricate himself from seemingly impossible situations, whether it would be taking a credit card to defuse a bomb, or it would be taking some rope and some jugs of something and using it as a trap, to plan whether to escape or whatever he was doing. And that's very typical. Aquarians are the type that can improvise using, just everyday items, very, inventive and innovative. Last but not least, I'm going to talk about Pisces. Now, there is a guy, Alan Hale, played the skipper on Gilligan's Island from 1964 to 1967, and despite being stranded on the island, he always seemed to be somewhat expansive and upbeat, and he tried to seem like he'd make the best of the worst circumstances, and always try to have kind of a, very idealistic, and always try to be somewhat happy and jocular despite, I guess, the depressing situation that they were in. Well, anyway, people, that will conclude this YouTube astrological segment for zodiac signs and actors and actresses. Stay tuned next time, where I'll be dissertating and talking about Capricorn midheaven and a natal horoscope. Until next time, people, stay well.